Which player from the Buffalo Bills should you be buying this offseason? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. You can also check out Kate Magdziuk, my co-host, on Twitter at Kate_. Or no, it's not underscore. It's just at Kate Magdziuk. Check her out. She does some fantastic work at the Gaming Society. Kate, how you doing this morning?
I'm sad, Marcus, because we don't have any football this season, at least not real football.
Well, this week,
and I'm devastated. Yeah, I'm already starting to feel the shakes. I'm starting to sweat. I'm having the withdrawals a little bit, but that's okay because Dynasty, as we know, never takes a break at any point. And we've got some interesting teams to talk about. You teased at the top of the show. We are, of course, going to talk about the Buffalo Bills, but surprise, we are going to also talk about the Dallas Cowboys. And folks, we obviously have the honor of having a very special guest on our show today, Marcus Mosher from the Locked On Cowboys podcast, who's our inside source. And I'm excited to talk about the Cowboys because they're an interesting team for a lot of reasons. We kind of talked about this before the show. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of value in this team from a dynasty perspective, but sometimes, Marcus, that means that this is a buy low window for XYZ and these miscellaneous, but there's a lot of question marks about this offense. And I do wonder if that could create some buy low opportunity. So let's start from the top. I'm going to let you lead this segment, Marcus, because this is your team after all.
Yep.
Who is the most valuable dynasty asset in the Dallas Cowboys offense? And you're not allowed to say CeeDee Lamb.
Oh, stop. It's CeeDee Lamb. It's CeeDee, but
that was such a gimme. Come on.
I will say
low-hanging fruit.
We were a little bit cautious on CeeDee Lamb the first 2 years. Not that we didn't love the talent, it's just that there were so many other weapons and stuff. But I thought you and I both thought once he got in this role as the Cowboys' number one receiver, he would take off. And that's exactly what he did. 107 catches, 1,400 yards this season, 9 touchdowns. Kate, he's being ranked as the wide receiver 4, but that also just happens to be the number 4 overall player on Dynasty League football. And honestly, it feels right. But you could also talk me into being in one spot higher. So currently, right now, we've got Justin Jefferson at 1, Jamar Chase at 2. If you wanted to move CeeDee Lamb up over A.J. Brown, who's sitting at wide receiver 3, I would have no problem with that at all.
I mean, from a workload perspective, right? Like there are so many questions about what is the future of this Dallas Cowboys offense. You have Dalton Schultz, who is a free agent. You have Tony Pollard, who is now injured, also a free agent. You have Ezekiel Elliott, who his role as a receiver has declined. The ball's got to go somewhere, right? And you and I both know that Dak Prescott is capable, a capable enough quarterback to produce a viable fantasy asset. So I think one of the most interesting aspects of CeeDee Lamb's game is the fact that he plays so much out of the slot. That can be money, pure money, especially in full PPR formats because of just the way they utilize players out of the slot to move the chains, just to get those 10 yards, live to see another down. And CeeDee Lamb is a very, very reliable wide receiver. So in full PPR formats, you can maybe talk me into CeeDee Lamb above AJ Brown. I don't know if I would consider the same in half PPR or standard leagues, just because of that touchdown upside. I think gives AJ Brown just a slightly bigger edge. But I definitely think the volume is there for CeeDee Lamb.
I will say, I think there's a chance, Kate, that we see CeeDee Lamb get even more volume next year because the Cowboys moved on from Kellen Moore and they're going to Mike McCarthy's offense, which has historically been pass, 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 right? They want to throw the ball all over the field. As good as CeeDee Lamb was this year, he only got 155 targets. And there is certainly a world where he could get 180, 184 targets like Justin Jefferson got last year. And they're just throwing more in the red zone because the Cowboys were one of the most run-heavy teams in the red zone this year. And all of a sudden we see CD putting up, Devontae Adams numbers like he did in Green Bay under McCarthy. So
Do you feel though that like 9 touchdowns is this? Because for me, where I'm at with CeeDee Lamb, nine touchdowns feels like a ceiling for CeeDee Lamb and the style of play. That's my concern with CeeDee Lamb versus an AJ Brown. Do you share that concern at all or no?
I mean, a little bit. I think he's somebody that's probably always going to be around 8-ish touchdowns a year, right? But if you look at his touchdown total, 669, and you look at how many targets he got inside the red zone, it almost feels like we could have some positive regression here. And with the Cowboys, they ran more than any other team in the red zone last year. And with Ezekiel Elliott's status kind of up in the air, Tony Pollard's status up in the air, we'll talk about Dalton Schultz in just a second. Maybe next year is the year where we see CD get double the amount of red zone targets. So I wouldn't be surprised, Kate, if it's coming up where he just has one of these years where all of a sudden it's 14 touchdowns for Lamb on top of 1,400 yards.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely on the nose there. Ranked 4th in targets, 4th in receptions, 6th in receiving yards, 11th in total air yards on the season. Like, I don't see an opportunity, or I don't see a world where his opportunity decreases, barring, of course, injury. We know the ceiling is sky high. In week 10, posted nearly 40 fantasy points against Green Bay.
Yeah.
And I honestly think after the Cowboys exit in the postseason, and in the news of Kellen Moore's departure, all of this signals that, like, generally speaking, people are panicking about this Cowboys offense just a little bit.
You should
And
listen to me.
again, that feels like potential buy low window. If you're concerned about Mike McCarthy calling plays, I think you leverage that to go buy CeeDee Lamb.
Yep.
But
Again, I don't know if the offense is going to be better for the Cowboys with Mike McCarthy. It's very likely not. But what we do know is historically McCarthy loves to throw the ball. He's going to throw the ball a ton. So I think CeeDee Lamb he has a chance for even more volume while maintaining his efficiency, which it's great news for us Dynasty players, Kate.
it really is.
Okay, I've got one guy that you should be buying from this Cowboys offense. We talked about how we don't love everybody else kind of in this offense. There's one
Mhm.
player that I'm buying. We'll get to that right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experience to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with their targeting tools. They go beyond the resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates at LinkedIn Jobs and connect them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Kate, I want to ask you first. Is there anybody from this offense outside of CeeDee Lamb that you are interested in buying this offseason?
I'm kind of all in on Dalton Schultz. And I don't know if that's cheating though, Marcus, because he is a free agent and we don't really know what we're going to expect, right? Like
I
I
do.
think okay, tell the audience what you expect to happen with Dalton Schultz because I think he's a buy. Maybe I'm cheating though if we're not planning on Dalton Schultz making a return, but tight end 6 over the last 3 seasons on average, just has played really efficiently. 17 touchdowns over the last 3 years. That's the 5th most among any tight end. Um, 2,000 receiving yards in that span. Like Dalton Schultz has been the guy, and he's functioned essentially as like a wide receiver too for Dak Prescott.
Yeah, and look at how he plays when he's with Dak compared to without Dak, right? We have Cooper Rush started 5 games this year. He started a game last year. He just didn't put up great numbers with Rush. In fact, the 5 games that he played with Cooper Rush, he had a total of 18 yards. So you kind of have to throw away those stats. But whenever Schultz is playing with Dak, he's really good. And we saw the playoff game against Tampa, 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. Against the 49ers, 5 catches, 27 yards and a touchdown. Like one of Dak's go-to receivers. Schultz is going to end up in one of 2 places this offseason. It's number 1, the Cowboys on a long-term deal, or number 2, the
I love it.
Chargers on a long-term deal. Dalton Schultz and Kellen Moore are very close. The Chargers have some cap space. They could use a more reliable tight end that can block and do some things in the short to intermediate portions of the field. I'm not worried about Dalton Schultz's landing spot. If he lands with the Cowboys, fantastic. We know what we're getting. If he lands with the Chargers, fantastic. We know he can succeed in that offense with an awesome quarterback. So I think Dalton Schultz is a buy at his current price tag.
So, I mean, I think, like, again, all of the question marks about this team is what makes these players valuable, right? Looking at Dynasty League football, the ADP from the month of January, Marcus, do you know where Dalton Schultz was drafted on average?
He probably was being drafted as what, tight end 10, tight end 11?
Tight end 11
Yeah.
behind Greg Dulcich.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
That makes absolutely no sense. Behind Pat Fryermuth, Darren Waller, Evan Ingram. Like, I actually would be inclined to take Dalton Schultz over all of these guys, just in terms of
The Ingram one's interesting
consistency.
just because he had such a big year, but I
He
kind of
had
agree.
such a big year, but we're also adding Calvin Ridley into the mix. There's another body that's going to be floating around in Jacksonville, and out of that entire list of names, Dalton Schultz feels like he has the highest ceiling. He's 26 years old. We've
That's the
already
thing I
seen
was
the
gonna mention.
production.
26, Kate.
26. Like, we've got time, baby. We've got that is the ripening age for tight
Yes.
ends, Marcus. That
Yes.
he is just starting to ripen. If he were a banana, he would be
Uh,
ripe.
yes. I would also mention if this is actually a buy that I would just make right now because it's cheap and you can do it and kind of protect yourself. Let's say Dalton Schultz does go to the Chargers this offseason. Jake Ferguson, the tight end the Cowboys drafted in the 4th round last year, got on the field quite a bit this season, was pretty productive when he got opportunities. The Cowboys like him a lot. I think Jake Ferguson, who's being drafted on average, is like tight end 25, 26. That's a good speculative buy just in case Schultz does leave. Uh, let's move on to the Bills, Kate. We don't really have to talk about the most valuable dynasty assets here because it's Stephon Diggs if you're playing in a 1 quarterback league, right? If it's a super flex league, it's Josh Allen. Um, but I want to ask you about Gabe Davis. What are you doing with Gabe Davis this offseason? Are you buying him? Are you selling? Are you holding? What are you doing here?
Um, I'm gonna be honest. I think the sell window for Gabe Davis feels like it's past, right? Like that. I'd like to sell Gabe Davis, but I need to know who's buying Gabe Davis because I feel like, generally speaking, the vibes aren't good, Marcus. Just they're really not good. I don't know. Like, what is the market for Gabe Davis? Because I was kind of out to begin with. I said this all off season last year that I had this feeling that Gabe Davis was going to finish like as a low end wide receiver 2, maybe high-end wide receiver 3, but the journey to get there was going to be volatile and nauseating. And that was exactly what we got. But right now, being ranked, drafted on average as the wide receiver 39, um, that value, like, it almost makes me want to buy because, like, I think
Yes.
we've almost overcorrected a bit. We know the ceiling is sky high. The biggest issue for me seems to be whether or not the Bills believe in him as a true wide receiver 1. It feels like that's fading a little bit. Um, I'm kind of at a loss for Gabe Davis. Some recent trades to give you some idea on value. Gabe Davis for a second, a
I'm
2023
in.
second.
100% in. All
Gabe
day.
Davis? Okay.
Yes.
How about Gabe
Partly
Davis?
because, hey, just really quick, I'm sorry. I've been watching a lot of the receivers for this year's class at the Senior Bowl, and just, you're not gonna get a better player than Gabe Davis in the second round of your rookie drafts. You're just not, especially not an offense that's as dynamic as Buffalo.
Yeah. And that, as high upside as the Buffalo offense to be, there are quite a few trades that have happened within the last 2 weeks where Gabe Davis was traded for a second round pick. It seems like that's kind of the market. I'm seeing
Well,
two,
I
three,
should.
4 trades where he went for a second round pick, and I would take Gabe Davis there for the ceiling.
This is a really old wide receiver class coming into the rookie draft because of some of the 2020 season was weird because of the COVID rules and all that kind of stuff. So, like, some of your top receivers in this class are 23, 24 years old. Davis doesn't turn 24 until April. You're locked into a guy that has steadily gotten better each of the last 3 years. This was the best season he's had to date, despite playing 2 fewer games than he did before. He scores touchdowns. He's got some big play potential. He's attached to Josh Allen. I think
I
he can buy.
Yeah, again, coming into this podcast, I don't really I didn't look at the value before the podcast. I was looking at the stats. I was like, drops mean absolutely nothing for fantasy football specifically,
No.
but the only reason that I think you consider them with Gabe Davis really is the fact that um you know drops mean maybe less reliability. Maybe they mean a little bit of frustration on behalf of the offense. I do think that there's a lot of room for a bounce back. I think maybe we've a little bit overcorrected on his price tag there. He's getting the opportunities. He's getting those opportunities with one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. And like we said, we know that drops aren't overly important because you know who led the Buffalo Bills in drops this year?
Probably Diggs.
It was Stephon Diggs. Obviously, he got more targets, so that's like to be expected. The drop rate is lower, but I'm just saying, like drops don't matter for fantasy. You don't lose points for drops. And Gabe Davis has been on an upward
Yeah.
trajectory. Let's not, I don't know, let's not hit the panic button just yet. I think he can bounce back.
By the way, drinking out of my Bills coffee mug today. Wow, I have Cowboy jerseys in the background, so very, very festive. You and I are both buying Gabriel Davis, but that's actually not the player that I'm buying the most of this offseason from the Buffalo Bills. I can't wait to talk to you about that. Today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you, because you know what's better than not doing your taxes? Everything. Everything is better. I hate doing my taxes, but TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stresses of taxes and file for you so you can do not taxes. Show your eyes that you don't have to do taxes. Don't waste your time. You can go out, go play golf, go watch some wide receiver tape. I've been watching the Senior Bowl guys the last couple of weeks. Last week, that's been a lot of fun. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring that your taxes are done right, guaranteed, so you can relax. It feels so good to be done with your taxes. I know my wife and I, we stress about tax season all year long because of some of our work stuff. It's great to just get it all done. Go to turbotax.com to learn more at Intuit TurboTax. come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Kate, let's talk about the one player that we should be buying from the Buffalo Bills this offseason. Can you guess who it is?
Is it James Cook?
It is James Cook. This one feels almost too obvious. But before I get into my spiel, our
You have a whole
theme of the
spiel, huh?
podcast, theme of the podcast this offseason is what? Every running back is a sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at where running backs are ranked and how you feel about them. Every single one is basically a sell. Except I think there's some value in guys like James Cook who are being drafted outside of the top 25 right now. I thought James Cook was really good as a rookie. Averaged 6.2 yards per touch, almost 700 yards from scrimmage. We know Devin Singletary is a free agent. Our guy Zach Moss is gone out of the equation. Neum
Hey,
Hines is really
hey.
just a special teams guy. I could see James Cook getting conservatively like 200 touches next year and being a 1,100 yard runner and scoring 7 touchdowns. And that's right in RB2 territory.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of upside here. James Cook was just, it felt like the momentum was always there. And this was my complaint when Zach Moss was in the offense. Now, I'm not saying that James Cook is Zach Moss, but the issue with the Buffalo Bills in their run game has been the lack of consistency, right? Like the notion that this team continues to lean on Josh Allen in almost to a fault, right? Like
Yep.
there was
Yep.
this excellent episode of the Ringer podcast right before the divisional round, and they talked about how they asked Josh Allen to play superhero, right? But he does it and he loves it. And like, it's not like they're asking him to be Superman and he's like, guys, can we rely on the run game? No, he shows up in his cape and his tights and he's like, yeah, I want to play Superman. And that's not a way to, that's not sustainable,
No.
right? Like,
No.
especially as Josh Allen ages and continues to get some of that wear and tear on his body. Like you need to have some sort of consistency in the run game. And they continue to deviate from the run game, even when it's working time and time again. So that is like the number one concern with James Cook, but he's the answer to the problem. So,
Yes.
but the Buffalo Bills need to wake up and realize that before we can start to fix things, because I think there's a lot of upside here with James Cook. And how do they unlock it?
Kid, I have a question for you. How many touches a game would James Cook need to average in your mind to be like a consistent weekend RB2?
14 to 16.
Okay. I think
I
think
think that's
14.
doable.
Yeah, the reason I ask this is because in the second half of the season, he was averaging 10 touches a game, right? I don't think it's all that crazy to expect him to get 3 more carries and 1 more reception a game next year, especially if Devin Singletary is gone. Even if he comes back, like I think they were a little cautious at the beginning of the season not to overwork him and to get him involved in the offense. I think going into year 2, could we see him average 11 carries a game and 3 receptions? I think so. On an offense like this, if he's continuing to average 6 yards a touch, we're talking about a really, really solid RB2 that's cheap right now.
Yeah. Now, Devin Singletary is scheduled to hit free agency in 2023. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the Buffalo Bills bring him back. Um, I think especially with the number of running backs, hitting the free agency
I would agree.
market in 2023, that is going to push down the value of Devin Singletary significantly because he's got a lot. He's got a lot of big names to compete with, right? In that contract market, you've got Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, David Montgomery. Like there are a lot of bigger names. I wouldn't be surprised at all based on kind of the relationship and fit that we've seen with David Montgomery. Clearly, this team really likes him. I think there's still a place for him here. But the draft capital that they invested in James Cook does signal that they're maybe ready for a change of guard, and maybe Devin Singletary morphs into that change of pace back, which feels better suited for him
Yeah.
given his
Yeah.
size and his role.
I think there's a chance that Devin Singletary could come back and James Cook could still be everything that we're just talking about. In fact, you could even make an argument that Devin Singletary coming back would actually help his value compared to, let's say they brought in David Montgomery, right, instead of Devin Singletary. That would make me more nervous because it feels like it feels like David Montgomery could do more of the inside running, and then they would pigeonhole James Cook as just the passing back. I I just think at his current price tag as RB27, going behind guys like Rachaad White, Cam Akers, Tyler Algier, I kind of just like James Cook at that value.
Yeah, 5.3 rushing yards per attempt in his rookie season, 22 missed forced tackles. And, against other rookies, maybe not overly impressive on the stat sheet because we actually had some decent rookie production in terms of the running back position. Damian Pierce, Tyler Algier, Kenneth Walker, Isaiah Pacheco, like all of these guys had really solid seasons. But what I think is interesting is the fact that James Cook produced pretty similar stats,
Yeah.
but on many fewer touches, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot to like about James Cook and the upside. It's just we have to trust that the Buffalo Bills are going to get this offense back on track. And by get it back on track, I mean let Josh Allen do his thing, but you
Let Josh
need to
Allen cook.
supplement. Huh?
Said let Josh Allen cook.
Let Josh Allen James Cook.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah,
I like it.
we just need to supplement that game. We need to
I think it'll
rely.
happen as Allen gets a little bit older. It just makes sense that he would. I mean, I not just to tie this back up with the Cowboys. We saw it happen with Dak, right? Dak, extremely heavy runner early on in his career. Now he suffered an injury that forced him to become more of a pocket passer. Obviously, we hope that doesn't happen with Josh Allen, but you could see as Dak was getting older, he was just running less and less. Kind of hope that happens with Josh Allen.
Yeah, I think you're in a good point. Now, after what we've seen this season, I think my only question for you, Marcus, has Josh Allen lost any value in dynasty
No,
leagues? Because people are hitting the panic button right now,
no,
big time.
not at all.
No,
By Josh Allen.
I, I agree. He's QB1 right now, not far behind as Patrick Mahomes, just a couple of draft spots on average. But yeah, if there are people panicking on Josh Allen, don't forget about that UCL injury that he'd played through
Yeah.
all season, and go by if you can.
All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday. And on Monday, local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All the same places that you'd get the Locked On Dynasty podcast. Go check us out on YouTube. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your first football free weekend since early August. We'll be back next week. Get you ready for the Super Bowl and continue to review some more teams from the 2022 season.